Welcome to the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we, a business owner and an artist, discuss the business of art and the art of business. Hey friends, I'm Carl, founder of Epic Made.
And I'm Ross, creative director of Epic Made, and we're the hosts of the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we share our thoughts on creativity, art, and business. Past guests include Ben Moffitt of Gantry, Justin Alanis of Storyco, and Duncan Alney of Firebelly Marketing.
All right. We're forever grateful for the supporters of our podcast, and we're always looking for more sponsors. That said, Pixel Retentive is brought to you by the creative gurus at Epic Made. Epic Made is a team of strategists and artists who excel at visual storytelling. Our studio crafts unforgettable animation and illustration that not only captivates your audience, but also drives tangible business results. We specialize in engaging in imaginative, pop culture savvy audiences and with beloved clients like Nickelodeon, WWE, and Sci-Fi. Visit getepicmade.com and let's collaborate on your next creative campaign.
I've been gone for a month. Have you fucked that up that many times?
Welcome back, Ross. Anyway.
With us today, we have Kristen Plescow. Kristen is an illustrator, a lover of tropical plants and frogs, and connoisseur of all things eclectic. She lives in the mid-Atlantic U.S., where she currently is finishing up a 2-year sabbatical from full-time freelance work. She's focusing on education right now, and she spends her time studying and exploring how her art could evolve for the future. Welcome, Kristen. Glad to have you.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Super stoked to have you. So before we jump into today's topic, we want our audience to get to know you a bit better. Could you tell us how long you've been in your industry and the project you're most proud of so far?
So how long I've been in the industry, I guess.
You're an artist, so yeah.
Yeah, I guess I started, like with all things, I guess like the beginning is always fuzzy, right? It's because you might get a job here or there, and it's like, would a swim coach paying you for a terrible logo count? I don't know, but well, does it? Oh, okay, I guess. So probably high school. I really got into art. I really have always liked it. And in college, I did a lot of furry artwork, which great community, very good people. They have a love for art. So it was the perfect fit, especially since I like fantasy art. It was like, well, what is an animal person if not fantasy? There we go.
For sure.
Yeah, and sorry, what was the second part of the question? I my brain.
Just project you're most proud of.
Oh, project I'm most proud of that. So, the problem with freelancing is, I'm sure you guys know, sometimes projects end up being secret for way longer than you want, and it's like, I'm happy with that. But a couple years ago, probably right around the pandemic, through Pilot Agency or Yellow Flight Agency or Pilot Studio. They're a branding agency in Massachusetts that I worked with for 6 years. Yeah, no. So and they were great, and that's So I ended up doing some licensing artwork for Lucasfilm for The Mandalorian, and it's very tiny, but every once in a while I'll see it like pop up. Like you'll just see it like on a just random stuff like fabric or something. You're like, oh, I did it.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Always
so yeah, it's fun seeing stuff in the wild. That's so basically anything I see in the wild is like, oh yeah, I remember that. Nice.
Yeah, that's great. Love that.
That's super cool. And of course, the double-edged sword of that is like when you had to get a project over the finish line, you no longer like it, and then you see it out in the wild because they made you make some changes or do some shit. You're like, this sucks. Like it, but yeah.
It was honestly like. One of the nicest things about that project is I had the support of the entire team, right? Like all of those things, even if I'm primarily the one painting it, like it takes a huge team effort. So like, like Dennis, like, it was the project manager, and like, China Blue Rocket she has a cool name, by the way. She was the art director. So I had a lot of like support from that. So I don't want to like take all the credit, but like, it's one of those things where it's like, that's also the other problem with like, if you work in an agency, you work as a team, right? So even though you might have a role, it's like, I want to at least shout out people that, help with that. And there were so many people in that studio that are awesome. So, I did not leave because I did not like the team. That's all. They have cool projects. It was fun.
We know someone named China Blue that works at Steamforge, which is a fascinating. Maybe the same person. I don't know.
If it's not the same person, that would be insane.
They're not the same person. That's a completely different person. Oh my God. Wow.
Okay. Yeah, that's why Ross and I both were like, well,
yeah.
Although she usually goes by Blue, so maybe that. But her official. But that's awesome. I did not realize there would be another China Blue anywhere in the world. That is fantastic. So
spells it with a Y. CHY. Anyways.
Wow. That's so cool.
That's funny. Very cool.
A different person.
Who
would have thought?
Yeah.
Well, today on Pixel Retentive, we really don't get a whole lot of artists on the podcast who are like just in it as a freelancer or in it working with studios. We get a lot of the studio side, CEOs or project managers and things like that, the business side. And so I figured it'd be really cool to just kind of discuss with you what it's been like being a freelancer, what you've been doing in what you've been learning over your 2 years, kind of where your art is going. We can kind of discuss some of the resources that we've, been using to learn some of our favorite creators and things like that. And I just have like a cool conversation about art education.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So I guess one of the things that has happened, I guess, a lot over the past 2 years, especially, is like the rise of AI, right? In work, which stresses a lot of people out, understandably, because there are tools that are AI assisted, like what is it, like in Photoshop, where you can cut out the subject of a photo really easily, but that's been in Photoshop for like years, right?
Yeah,
that's
content aware fill.
Really... Yeah, content aware fill, stuff like that, where it's like a tool for artists that it specifically just assists you in making the thing versus like doing the work for you and you having less input. That stressed me out a little bit too. Not gonna lie, did not like that. But the thing I'm thankful about is it made me think about what do I like about artwork? Like, why do I do this? Like, what matters to me? And honestly, a lot of it, and something I'm trying to pivot to, is traditional fantasy artwork, like painting by hand, painting with oils, and it's not an easy skill to learn. But honestly, I'm kind of thankful because that's awesome.
Yes, I get it. It's like it's sorry, ADD.
That's great.
Yep.
Yeah, no. So that's one thing. I try to look on the positive side, even if there's like a negative. It's like, oh, that's a thing that's happening. That's a speeding train in the corner. I don't know how that'll end up. Maybe we can move the truck in time, but
look, I think people are going to value the tangible artwork more in the future than they ever have, because it's so far removed.
Oh yeah.
It's like you handwrite someone a letter that really seems meaningful, versus you could have said the same thing in a text message with like little emojis and GIFs and shit, and that doesn't seem meaningful. So
yeah, and also, I mean, like I think one of the things you highlighted sort of haphazardly when talking about AI is just the lack of control that you have. Like, no matter how much like in painting you can do in these AI programs, there is still going to be a infinitely less amount of control than if you actually know how to paint. And if it becomes so minute that you do need that level of control when using the software to make changes, then at that point you've kind of bridged the gap anyway, right? Like, then at that point the people who are using the software are just artists with like a degree of art, or a degree of pen stability, and the content aware fill and things like that.
Yeah, dude, it boils down to like the only people that can really effectively use these tools are already great artists. They're already exceptionally good at doing art. This just makes them be able to do it faster. And now we're just having arguments and disagreements and understanding about who owns what copyright within the space. Because if you put some prompters in there with, like you said, endless amounts of in painting, can't put you in control of what the hell's going on, right? Like,
there's a new. It's funny how backwards the community is at this point. Like, there's a trend. I mean, this might be dated by the time this podcast actually releases, but there's a trend I'm seeing on TikTok currently where there's a bunch of artists who are creating stuff with AI. And then to prove that it's not AI, they are then tracing and painting over it. But they're not. But because they don't have the fundamental knowledge that it took to make the thing in the first place, they're just copying whatever's under it. So ultimately, it still has the same weird quirks as the AI art image, even though they have now they're doing it for a speed paint. So like now they have a speed paint of it, so it's their art. Like it's so weird. It's like at that point, just learn how to draw. Like you're putting so much effort into like
faking it,
into trying to mislead the community into thinking that you're an artist. You are almost an artist at this point. Like just actually learn how to do it.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's kind of nuts. Like just the amount of the style still changes. They don't seem to correct the mistakes that the machine makes that normal people with training would probably not make, just because we don't want to waste our time rendering something with like that's just bad. I mean, you know what I mean.
I mean, that's the biggest thing, right? Is that like Magic the Gathering or Wizards of the Coast in general, I think, just put out a press release, basically talking about their stance on AI at this point, because they've gotten called out several times for having AI used in, at the very least, marketing content. And it's always so obvious to tell, because like you'll look at a clock in the corner and it'll look like someone, those like tests to see if you're like mentally stable. You're supposed to draw a clock and see if
no, Ross, no mentally stable.
See if the numbers
take that all the time.
There's like a brain tumor test or something like that, where basically you're supposed to draw a clock and see if you can successfully line up all the numbers around the circle. And if you have this like disconnect between your brain and your coordination, you'll draw the numbers in like weird spots. It's kind of like that. And it's like no one in their right mind would do this if they were drawing it intentionally. So everyone knows it's AI. I do think that I don't necessarily want to make this whole conversation about AI, but it is kind of topical, unfortunately. I think that there is a use case for it. And I think that using it to fill out background elements is fine. I think that using it to gain inspiration for stuff you're painting is better. Obviously there's literally nothing wrong with that at all. It's basically just hitting the randomizer button and seeing like how someone or something else would have generated, the topic you're trying. Like I have a like what to draw app where I just like press a button and it's like ghost with chains haunting, mid-century rich douchebag. It's Scrooge. That's basically the same thing, right? It's give me, and I use ChatGPT for this too when writing. It's just like give me like break me out of the neuroses of like my first draft, right? Like give what does the machine think it should say or look like? And I think that's really helpful, that a lot of people don't discuss enough, in my opinion. I think that's an incredibly valuable use case for the tool. And then I've used AI to fill out stuff in the back, like a castle that's like this much of the fucking illustration in the background. I'm like, I don't want to draw this goddamn castle. Like it's not a focal point at all of the image. It just kind of needs to be there. I could just buy a stock image, or I could generate something on AI, and I kind of see them as the same thing. In fact, if you go on Adobe stock, there might literally be no difference at this point because of how many AI submissions there are on Adobe stock. And so I think that those are okay use cases, but people who are just trying to like press a button and then pass it off as their own art is so weird to me. Like there's no, it's just pride in it. There's no pride in it. It's just like why do you care so much that people see this as your art? I'd respect people who were just like, hey, look what I generated, but that's not how they put it.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like weird stolen valor. It's like, why do you need to get credit for this thing that something else did? Like, I just don't. It's not stolen valor. You know what I mean? It's like claim it is, but it's like
it's the art version of stolen valor for sure. I think that's what pisses Ross off. He's always said like this whole thing just pisses me off. It's like I worked my whole life for these magical superpowers to be able to summon amazing visual things that no one else could do, and now some asshole can do something pretty close in 3 seconds with a text prompt. Like,
it's just at the end of the day, like, they don't have as much control and whatnot, but like I think it just perpetuates the culture that we're living in right now of like social media points kind of being the like chief currency of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it hurts artists. It was hurting artists before, right? Like it was already hurting artists because for a long time, it didn't matter how long we took to do a thing, right? As long as it was done within client specs and done on time according to the client or according to our own free time, it didn't really matter. Like you could theoretically make money off of a piece you finished. But because now popularity or success is tied so closely to the ability to produce on social media, there is a need for sort of a rapid production of art, regardless of how good it is. And if it is good and fast, then that's ideal that's exponentially ideal. And I think that's the thing that really bothers me is that at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because with the culture currently, whether or not it's faked or like generated, because people are just consuming it for 3 seconds anyway. And so if it looks close enough, it almost doesn't matter. And that's the thing I think that's the thing that bothers me the most.
So Kristen, you're teaching like young minds, young budding artists at this point, right?
Yes, yeah, or at least for the past 2 semesters I have. I was an online. I'm certified in the state of Florida to teach online, by the way. So don't know what that means.
I don't know.
How do you get certified to teach online in one state? How does that work?
You take one class for one day. And you get paid. It was actually a really cool class. It was a whole day class, and essentially it was like, how do you engage students better? Like, especially if you're teaching online, because like online classes kind of suck because they're online. So you don't have the ability to like, I'm going to wander around and look at what everyone's doing. It's not really like that. So it was useful for me. And technically I have a certificate of something. I couldn't tell you what it is. I can't remember, but yeah, no, I was really fortunate to have the opportunity to teach at University of South Florida in their St. Petersburg campus, invisibly through the internet. And honestly, one of the things I'm very big into is hand skills, right? Because like, no matter what happens in the world with AI, in the end, would you rather hire someone who can draw, but you can kind of have them use AI to make them faster, or would you rather have someone who literally cannot figure out what a grid is? They don't know how to write, and they have terrible taste, and they just hit a prompt like an animal all day. Like, not that they're animal, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, come on, like, a child could do that versus like having some actual skills. So I told them that. I'm like, hey, no AI in this class. Like, we're learning things. We're learning how to do things manually, because what happens if you're without a computer? What happens if like an EMP goes off and your computer's dead? Like, you have to be able to make something. Not everything can be online.
I love that. You have to really be an artist and own it. Like, yeah, I get that.
Carl already knows if an EMP goes off, I'm jumping off a bridge.
Well,
But
half of my life will be exactly the same if an EMP goes off, because I spend all my free time like that I can just in the yard or on an adventure growing food. Like it's
crazy bastard. Anyway,
Growing food is fun,
but
you know.
but yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, at the end of the day, there will be a merging of that technology and commercial art. Like there will come a time where there isn't necessarily a hard line between whether or not you can call yourself an artist because you use AI, or whether or not you can call yourself an artist because you don't use AI. I think it's going to be a hybrid profession, maybe within the next 5 years or so. Almost certainly. It's all right. We're already kind of seeing that. And so I think having the root understanding of why the AI is choosing to do these things and what it gets wrong, and like beyond just like a gnarled claw hand or 3 eyes or whatever, but like
6 fingers was my favorite phase of it.
Yeah,
that was just.
But like, beyond that, like, does this color theory work? Does this perspective work? Does this anatomy work? And being able to identify those things and then correct them. I think there is a world where people enjoy working with AI to get what they want produced faster. Right? Because at the end of the day, I mean, I don't know if you have any significant personal projects, Kristen, but like I have like a backlog that is taller than most people's houses of just personal projects that I want to complete, right? And if I could reasonably use AI to complete those with the understanding that what comes out on the page is what I saw in my head, to at least a reasonable degree, I would probably do it. Like, I don't have that much of a disdain for AI to not use it on principle. But it's just, you need to have the skill first.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like how I use AI, Ross. I don't know if you've ever followed any of mine. So I'm not on my art team at Epic Mate. So I just do art for art's sake. Ross did fire me. So what I've been doing on my live streams is trying to make art as fast as possible with like little regard for the tools or, whatever, like, there's no ego in it. It's just me trying to do cool shit. And like, for instance, like I was having trouble getting this hair to flow exactly like I wanted it. I just circled it and I was like, flowing hair, and I hit the random button, 12 times, and it finally did a piece that I liked, and then I morphed it and shaped it and layered, and now it looks really nice, right? But like, I just wasn't, like, I could have spent another 3 hours trying to get this hair to look really like I want it to. I know what it needs to look like. It's not a major detail, but it majorly looked like shit until I ran it through that thing, right? So I could have grabbed a stock image, which is what I do sometimes, a lot of photo bashing, but I just cheated. So like, that's fine. I'm also not, I also didn't like shave my horse and like make my brush and then crush up all my pigments and do all, like, that was all cheating too. If we ask, somebody from a few hundred years ago how they made paintings. So anyways, I'm being a little, I don't know what that argument is, but anyway.
No, I think everyone has, I think everyone knows kind of what matters to them, right? Like for me, it's I don't find AI useful for me personally at all. And mostly it's not for like, oh, because I can just do it. It's not that. For me,
it's
like,
not a high and mighty reason. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the craft. It's I really enjoy like, how do you do this? I like understanding exactly how it's done. How do I simplify this down? Oh, this was hard. I don't like how hard that was. How can I figure this out so it's not hard anymore? And that to me, that puzzle is what makes art so enjoyable to me, and how I've kind of dealt with, because art, like, to be honest, like, it's kind of hard. Like,
yeah, it's really hard.
Like, it's a lot of thankless studying, and like people say, oh, you're a starving artist. Like, it's like, come on, like, really? Yeah. And you're kind of always dealing with that. And actually, one of the best uses for AI that I've heard of for professional artists, one of my students went to, I can't remember what convention it is. He went to France to do like a game design convention thing, and to get portfolio reviews. And he mentioned like, oh, one of the people talked about essentially using AI as like a Pinterest summary machine. So like if you're like, ooh, we have to draw like an ice wall, like we have to concept something out, like having the machine spit out a bunch of stuff and you go like, okay, well, we're not going to do that because that's like the expected thing. That's boring. Everyone's seen it on Pinterest. It's Pinterest essentially.
Yeah.
And that's like such a, honestly, like probably the best use case for AI I can think of, where if people really don't like AI, but they're forced to use it for something, I think that's probably the most tolerable use cases for people who are anti-AI to use, just because it's like, oh, you're using it as a summary of all the art and you're doing specifically the opposite of what it's doing or something completely different. So it's just kind of I was just like, oh, I never thought about that. That's actually not a terrible use. So
I like that. It's basically, because it's amalgamating more or less the median solution for whatever prompt you give it, right? Like it's amalgamating what the average, according to the whole of the internet, the average solution is, right? So yeah, if you want to be unique, you literally do the like make decisions sort of antithetical. No, there's a word in opposition of antithetical. I think that's the word of what the machine spits out. That's interesting.
And maybe it doesn't have to be wholly a negative approach either. Like if you don't know how to visualize a concept, like I've used it in the past, like just helping people like start up businesses that like couldn't afford to pay for a logo from us anyways. So they'd probably go to Fiverr and spend $10 or whatever. So let's jump in ChatGPT with its Dolly plugin and let's put in all of the pieces of what your business is, right? Like, you guys are this, you do that, all the things, and then see what it generates. And that's the same information. It's basically scraping its database going, oh, we said reliable plumber that does blah, blah, blah with oranges. And it's putting all that together. And this is sort of what you could expect the collective human consciousness to kind of expect to see. So therefore, like then you can derivative from there, but know that you can't go but so far from there, because if you go too far out of what the expectations are, you now are disconnected from what you're trying to communicate. So finding the balance, so the other side of that is like, this is what you're trying to relate to, but still stand out from, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's it needs to find its niche, right? Like the stuff is new, and I think as it finds its niche, people will. Honestly, if it destroys all artist jobs, like things are gonna look really bad. Like no one's gonna buy things. Like it's gonna.
Be bad. It won't. And that's
it's not even
billion. But ironically, the people whose jobs it's going to destroy are all of the jobs that artists wouldn't want anyway.
Right.
Like the first thing AI comes after is programming, then accounting, then lawyer, then like it comes after the information focused jobs, because they're all just plugging shit into databases anyway. Like, and there's no way you could do it faster than a computer.
Well, and on the art side of things, like the people that are getting really wrecked is like the Fiverr artists, right? Like no one's spending money on these, like I'm not gonna. The low hanging fruit type of stuff is pretty much getting eradicated. That, and I think concept artists have really had a hard go, because they were never really selling intellectual property; they were selling conceptualization, right? And now that's like a director of whatever can just jump in there and prompt a bunch of ideas. They don't need it to be hyper specific stuff.
They don't need it to be accurate.
Yeah, or to own the IP. So I think they're like the Concept Artist Guild. They're having a rough go with it, and I get it. And that's hard for people that have been a concept artist their whole life, and now they they're having to compete with text prompters.
Yeah, I think
that. Go on, Ross.
I know. Go for it.
No, I honestly, there's not really any job that's safe from this, and it's really up to us to kind of find, essentially like do the stuff that isn't the low hanging fruit, like you mentioned, right? Like the nice thing is that it's already scraped the entirety of the internet, and it's at the point it's at now. What else are they going to take? Legitimately, what else can they take? Like, yes, you could probably weight things differently, but I really doubt that it's going to be so good that it makes incredible, mind-blowing, like completely done illustrations off the bat, which is, to me, nice. One, it's digital. Two, it's never going to be quite. I just don't see how it could ever get to that point. Maybe I just lack imagination, but like, so I don't want people to feel like, oh no, all jobs are going away. And it's like, I wait and see. Do what you can. Find something that essentially AI can't do, either yet or maybe ever.
And I think that you mentioned that the thing that you like about art is the physical process of doing it. And Carl already knows that if I could reasonably press a button to complete art, and I've kind of alluded to this already in my previous thing about personal projects, if I could press a button to complete art I actually wanted to see on screen, I would 100% do it. But I think the thing it will never be able to do that I value too much in art isn't problem solving the craft. I guess it is to some degree. It's problem solving the storytelling within the craft. Like the symbolism in negative space, or the relationship of two colors on screen, or these like hidden stories inside art or in long form comics or things like that, like the motifs and all that consistency that only a person can intentionally impart into it. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I love. Like, when you look at a panel in a comic, or a large poster or something like that, and you see all these like little hidden things that the artist knew to put in there because it subconsciously means something, like that, regardless of how good AI gets, it could generate a perfect illustration. It will never be able to do that, because there's no way to translate it to the computer. It has to come from an internal digestion of like what you think that symbol means to you, and what you think those relationships mean to you, color relationships or shape relationships or contrast relationships. That's the kind of problem solving that I love in art. And it's the reason why I don't like, and probably will never ultimately press a button to generate a complete piece of art, is because it will never tell the story I want it to tell, even if it can create the perfect representation of the items in that story. And so I think that's the biggest thing that is going to be valued in the next several years, is regardless of what medium you're using, is really intelligently design stories around illustration, around long form visual storytelling, around advertising. Like, we're already seeing people not wanting to digest straightforward advertising, right? Where if you're trying to sell an apple, people don't want to see an apple. They want to see a story about why they should buy an apple. And the story has to be more valuable than the apple itself. Like, you arguably have to get entertainment first out of it in order to be successful, which is why TikTok is so big. And so I think that's where we're going to be headed, is like the idea behind what it is you're putting on the page, and why this thing is in the corner, and why that thing is this color, and why, the why of that sort of craft is going to be more valuable than anything else, I think.
Yeah.
And that's what I love teaching.
I agree. Oh, good. Yeah, no, the narrative part, the story part definitely is, like, if you go to an art museum, all the best artwork has like a ton of story behind it. Like, you could stare at like a lot of these old pieces. You're like, wow, why did the artist do this? And then you can learn about it, and you're like, that's dope. I love that. Thank you for teaching me. And it's like, oh, so maybe we just need to kind of, I guess, elevate ourselves, right? Like, elevate what we're doing this for. And that's, I'm not against that. If artists basically have to elevate themselves, and they make even more incredible pieces of work to stand out, like, that's awesome. That's dope. And I know artists can do it. And I know, honestly, a lot of other creative fields, even programming and stuff, there's a lot of things AI just will not be able to do.
For sure.
Like, optimize code. How are you going to do that? Can you run something on a satellite 40 or 50 miles, years away, like Voyager? Like, someone had to creatively program that back, Like, you've heard it was like kind of went silent, and then they had to like get programmers to like, ooh, what's going on? And, that's so creative. That's awesome. And they have the limitation of, pretty sure AI probably couldn't figure out how to do that. At least not right now. Yep. Maybe someday, but I don't know. So I don't want people to get all unhappy. I know we've been talking about AI a lot. I'm sorry. Sorry, I don't like that.
It has basically been the conversation, and that's okay. I think that there's a reason that most of the time, whenever we talk to anyone in the creative field, it steers in that direction. It's such a like big scary boogeyman that it's hard to not talk about it, right? Because it's like this giant maw is just hanging over the whole community, and it's like, is this thing gonna chomp down at some point? I think that yeah, I think it's like you said, elevating artwork not based on skill, because whatever skill even fucking means, but like because so many people stylistically go in different directions that I don't think it takes skill to do what you want out of art necessarily. Like, some people want the whole beautifully painted Rembrandt style art, and that they want to generate that, and that requires a significant amount of skill. But like, to draw Rick and Morty doesn't, right? It's a stylistic choice where you can bend anatomy that in a way that like most people won't notice, and you don't have to learn how to render really well or light really well. You have a rudimentary idea of what those things are will get you a really long way. But both of those things, whether it's Rick and Morty, which is one of the best told cartoons of all time, same thing with Adventure Time, and all of these really simplistic solutions for visual entertainment, or something like a Rembrandt, where there's a ton of obvious talent and weight on the paint strokes. It's intention that really is going to matter more in the future. I think it's knowing why you did a thing on the page and being able to defend that. And if you know why you've done it, that means that the audience will subconsciously pick up on it. And that's why I think a lot of people say that AI art lacks soul, which is a really like arbitrary thing to say about anything. But I think it's because the AI is mimicking, regardless of how accurate it is, it's mimicking what's asked of it on a subject level, but not on a subtext level. And that's really the big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well said. Yeah, it's definitely just in any case, yeah, like oh God, I lost my train of thought. But you nailed it on the head. Narrative is really important, and all the best artwork, in fact, I like the one example I would probably give for like me taking a cell phone photo, right, of just something, just a bunch of objects, right, versus and I can't remember his name at the moment, but the photographer who made the I Spy books, like, those are killer. Those are like some of the best crafted. They took weeks for each one to be made. They are so amazingly put together. Like, every single object had a story, an element, or a reason to be there, including the poetry, the nice poetry that was done by a different person. It was just great. And, even though technically both of them are photographs, one of them obviously has that amazing intent and stuff behind it. And it makes it just, you can stare at it for 10 minutes or whatever. Kids will crowd around the book. Like, I don't know. You guys probably, you guys like those books, right?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like books.
Yeah. I remember, like, whenever a kid got one for the library, we'd all crowd around and we'd start, ooh, where is it? Where's the thing? And it was really fun. It was just a fun thing. So I think making those interactive pieces and, not even interactive in that way, but like making something, make it worth it for the viewer to look at the piece. Like, that's how you really are going to capture attention and elevate yourself.
Yeah, you have to make it say something, right? Like,
yeah,
you have to give it purpose and intention, and like even a character leaning on a wall, you know, there has to be a reason for it in your head, and you have to get really good at translating what that is on the page, so that when someone types in, you know, man leaning on wall, the AI doesn't capture the same thing. It doesn't understand the reason this character is doing this, and the, you know, subtextual emotion behind it, and the, you know, like regardless of how many emotional modifiers you add, like moody and whatnot, it there still has to be something you're trying to say with it, I think, that is intangible for AI, and hopefully always will be.
Yeah.
And we will see as the world unfolds.
Yeah.
Definitely. And one of the things I actually find to be a really valuable skill that a lot of younger artists, I feel, don't do enough of, and this maybe sounds really weird, but there's actually a lot of parallels between like the sciences and arts in terms of the curiosity, like the ability to, like, I want to learn about that. Like, I want to draw that. I want to study this. And a lot of early artists were also scientists, right? They were looking at the natural world around them. They were trying to figure stuff out. And I think it's really important for younger artists, or any artist, really, all artists, all of us need to have things that we're interested in. Because I've seen so many people that are like, oh yeah, I like anime. They're like, okay, cool. What about it makes you like it? Because like, you don't want to just copy something just for no reason. Like, what about it? Like, does it remind you of, oh, you're staying up late watching Toonami, and it's that like feeling of like, yeah, mom and dad can't tell me what to do, you know? Like, what is it?
I think what it comes down to is that it's already pre-filtered, right? Like when your likes in as an artist are already art, that means that another artist that's another artist's experience filtered already, and now you're getting sort of a secondary filter through it as inspiration, as opposed to digesting your own experiences and own emotions to create your own art. So I like that. I like the idea that like artists almost need other hobbies other than art and entertainment, which I feel like is most artists surround themselves with art and entertainment as their core personality. I definitely like that piece of advice. I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, I mean, that's like most of my art has like figurative works in it that I use that I'm inspired by. I do a lot of yoga and then nature, and it's all kind of fused in, right? Like, which is fun. So,
yeah,
I like that.
It's important to have it's kind of like you know those cereal commercials where they say like part of a balanced breakfast, but then like no one ever actually does that. They always just eat the cereal.
And it's also like that. Lucky Charms. So it's like, this is the part that isn't balanced in your breakfast. Like,
yeah, you know. And I found that especially with and again, like, I like anime a lot. Like, I was a big, like, not maybe so much anymore, because I think a lot of the stuff is I guess I my tolerance for screaming has gone down as I've aged, and a lot of anime is just like, you know, it's just like, ugh. And actually, one of the reasons, the last time I went to an anime convention, something called yaoi paddles were still a thing. I don't know if you guys know what that is.
No.
I hope you don't. Okay.
I mean,
so basically,
I know what yaoi is, so I can imagine what the.
Yeah, I'm out of the loop entirely. I'm Pokemon and DBZ. That's about as, you know, and my son could talk about it all day, but other than that, yeah.
DBZ and Pokemon are perfectly respectable. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. There is a subsect of stuff done for women, and it's usually like a guy and a guy together, but it's specifically targeted towards women, not gay men. That's yaoi, or like that sort of thing. Okay. Nothing wrong with that. That's fine, right? There was a time in the early to mid-aughts where they essentially, like, I guess someone decided to wood burn yaoi onto a wooden paddle and sell it at a convention. And these were just super popular. But the problem is people started like hitting people with them and things like that. And I remember going to an anime convention. You see this happening. I got schwacked my stuff. I did not like these people. Like the people around me were just insane. Like, and I'm like, you know what? Don't like anime anymore. This sucks. Like, I'm going with the furries. They don't do this stuff. This is, and
they don't have a furry battle.
Yeah, no, they don't. Like, no, consent is very big, which I think the anime community at that point did not learn about. Like, hey, if people don't want to be hugged or touched or hit with a paddle, maybe don't do that. And it's just kind of insane. So whenever I see anime now, I have like Vietnam flashbacks to that time where I'm just like, oh, I don't know if this person is that sort of they never are, but it's just whenever I see like a student who really likes anime, I don't want to discourage them from that necessarily, but it's like, hey, if you want to draw a good anime, you really have to observe from life. You really have to, like, all the best anime, all those people can draw super well. Like like Miyazaki isn't just a good artist. He likes observing things and he writes stories based on his experiences and things that matter to him. Why wouldn't you just do the same thing as him? Look at what he does. Do that. That's okay.
Picasso said, rumored to have said when questioned about his art, because someone presumed was rumored to have basically said like, hey, my 10-year-old daughter could draw like you draw or whatever, because he was into the abstract side of things later in his career, and basically said as a retort, he's like, it's taken me my entire life to be able to learn how to draw like your 10-year-old. And because he could draw masterfully crafted anatomy, he just didn't see the world that way, and so he chose not.
Remarkable, right? Like everyone's done that. It's been done. Like, what are you saying? Right. That was the thing, right? Like, anyways, yeah. Rembrandt had already done it, right? Like, 100 years before him. Like, what would be the point?
A lot of Rembrandt love in this podcast.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite greats, so I get it. But
best pastels I've ever owned. They're my favorites.
So we are coming up on time. But before we wrap, we did have one last question for you. Kristen, is there anyone or anything in your career that you'd like to shout out to the audience? Might be a mentor, a valuable resource, a favorite client. We've already had a couple of shout outs from you just in general, but I wanted to open the floor to you.
Yeah, well, obviously my bud Andrea Radek, great person. We had her on the podcast a while ago. It's always, the problem is like a lot of professional artists are really awesome. So what I do encourage people to do is literally go to conventions and meet people, because that's like at least 50% of this business, right? Is to meet people, to network and stuff like that, which can be as simple as like, hey, your stuff's cool. I like you, stuff like that.
Yeah.
In terms of like something that might help someone who's on their own journey and wants to kind of, I guess, take their interests and try to translate it more into art. I really like James Gurney. He has a YouTube channel. He has a bunch of books that are just fantastic, and he's a great educator. And a lot of what he does is he does studies and plein air paintings outside. So, which sounds boring, but he makes it good. He makes it cool. So it's like, oh, I want to do that too. And that's that kind of infectiousness where you're like, I want to create something after seeing something. I get that after seeing his channel, and other people might too. So
his art's fantastic as well. So
he's also pretty good. Yeah, I mean that helps. So yeah, I not that he probably needs the help, but man, if you don't know his artwork, it's pretty good. There's a lot of dinosaurs, so.
Hey, dinosaurs need love too. And look, anytime that something is a resource for somebody that helps them, like, that's what it's about. Like, yeah, the guy, he probably doesn't need extra support from our podcast, but if our listeners hear that and they can go there and it makes them better, then everybody's winning.
Exactly.
Cool.
Oh.
All right, Kristen. Well, I really appreciate you. Let me see. Get my shit together over here. I'm bouncing around on all the things. So yeah, big thank to Andrea. She's super cool. I guess you guys used to work together, right?
Yeah. We worked together at Star City Games. So which I believe she mentioned. So we were there. Yeah. So it's fun.
Yeah. And like you said, going out and meet people. I met her at PAX Unplugged in Indianapolis, so that was cool.
Heck yeah.
No, that's what you got to do, right? You got to meet people.
Yeah.
Well, it has been great meeting you, Kristen. We have been talking with Kristen Plescow. Plescow, right?
Yep. Perfect.
And her website is listed below, but if listeners want to follow up with you directly, where should they go?
Well, if you type in my name into the Google or into something else, it should be pretty easy to find, like Twitter, stuff like that. Like, I'm on Discord. It's literally just my name.
Gotcha.
So easy enough. Same with the email. It's just my name.
Yeah, that's great.
Simple.
Love it.
So, yeah.
Cool. All right, Kristen. Well, thanks so much for being on our show. And until next time, friends, we'll see you later.
Thanks for having me.
We really hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe to join us on our next journey through the world of art and business on the Pixel Retentive Podcast.